Hello everyone. Today we are going to learn about the blurring and sharpening effects in new cinematography and post-production editing. The effects of blurring and sharpening, they are mainly used to soften or sharpen images, as well as to address areas with overly sharp edges or excessive contrast. They can even transform originally clear images into a hazier appearance, creating a sense of ambiguity. These effects can be categorized into various types, including fast blur, camera blur, directional blur, motion blur, anti-aliasing, mixed blur, channel blur, sharpening, unsharp mask, and Gaussian blur. To better understand these effects, we will use a few examples. How to make blurring and sharpening effect. Sharpening is the effect of rapid focusing and edge blurring. By enhancing the clarity or focal degree or specific areas in an image, the colors of a certain part of the image can become more vivid. Let's see the two pictures. We could see a distinctive difference of the pictures, before and after sharpening, resulting in a sharper and clearer image. The effect used in the picture on the right side is frequently seen in television dramas, where the faces of characters speaking are made clearer to enhance blurry images. During the process of material recording and capture, due to uncontrollable factors such as shooting conditions, the image may exhibit a certain degree of blurriness, thus necessitating post-processing for clarity. Let's consider the sharpening effect using a short video clip of shoes that we previously shot. For demonstration, in this clip, there's a close-up shot with very distinct textures, but currently, it is not very clear to us. Let's employ the sharpening effect to see whether it can be clearer. By expanding the effects panel, locating the video effects, and finding the blur and sharpening effect. Choose the sharpening effect. We drag it onto the material. Then select this segment of material. Find the effects controls at the top left. So we could see the sharpening effect that we just added. Here, the parameters are quite simple. There is a parameter for sharpening amount that can be adjusted. We can increase the sharpening amount. It is supposed to display a more pronounced effect. In order to make it more obvious, we could see some very noticeable texture here. To make it clearer, let's click the sharpening command. The FX here in the left is a switch button. Click once will turn it off. Click again and it will be turned on. We could see more details here. It enhances contour clarity through black and white contrast. Of course, the value should not be too high. If it is too high, we could see the text here or this logo is a little distorted. So the value should not be too high. Moderate adjustments are sufficient. The optimal effect is we could see some improvement in clarity as well as some details. This is how we should deal with the sharpening effect. Gaussian blur effect refers to a type of video filter that adjusts the blur intensity over time, transitioning from initial clarity to gradually increasing blurriness. The primary purpose of this filter is to average out the most visually distinct color variations within image regions, creating a softening effect on the overall picture. The Gaussian blur effect is achieved through the use of a distortion curve derived from the color values of adjacent pixels in the image. Let's remove the previous sharpening effect. For instance, if I want to enhance the sense of depth in the image and make the sides appear more blurred to emphasize our logo section, let's give it a try. We'll choose to apply a Gaussian blur, dragging and placing the effect onto our material. You notice that we've successfully added the Gaussian blur effect. The degree of blur increases as we adjust the blur intensity parameter. Additionally, this blur effect can be applied globally in both horizontal and vertical directions, or independently in each direction. Let's give applying the blur effect. You see that the entire image becomes blurred. However, this might not always be the effect we are aiming for. For example, by blurring only in the horizontal direction, you notice that this effect is sometimes used in transitions. Similar effect. For instance, we can place a keyframe at this point and decrease the blur intensity on the front clock. Now, a keyframe is automatically added. Let's move on. Adding another keyframe further down the timeline. We can switch it back by clicking Go to Previous Keyframe. Now let's increase the blur value. This process generates a blurry animation, transitioning from blur to clarity. This technique can also serve as a form of transition. Let's turn it off. Remove all the keyframes. Now let's explore more possibilities. Earlier, the entire frame became blurry. What if we only want the sides blurred and the center to remain clear? How can we achieve this? We can use a mask to control it. For instance, let's select the material, then the pen tool. In previous classes, we talked about creating effects, such as split screens, by adding a mask. We could also use a mask for localized blurring. Select the pen tool, draw a rough path, and create an area. You don't have to select a very standard section. Just selecting one is enough. Right, close it. Now, increase the blur intensity within the mask area, adjusting both horizontal and vertical directions. Notice that the selected area blurs while the surrounding remains clear, which means the mask's orientation is incorrect. We can check Invert, achieving the desired localized blur. We want the surrounding area to be blurred, while the selected area to be clear. But you may notice that it is not natural. We need to feather the mask, softening the edges. Make the boundary less clear. This way, a uniform transition effect emerges, with the interior being unaffected. And then, in the middle, our path is influenced by 50%. The outer dashed line represents 100% influence. Alright, let's click on the blank space. At this point, what we see on the screen is a blurred effect around the surroundings. Does this not serve to highlight our brand even more, making its logo appear clearer? Okay, press the spacebar. Alright, at this moment, you all will notice that, since the footage we captured is a moving scene, what about these masks? Will it move along? Well, it does not. So we can create a following animation for it. The method is simple. We add keyframes to the mask path. At this point, we select the mask path add a keyframe. And then adjust its position. By defining the anchor point of the mask, we can quickly position it to the specific area we want to control the display of. Alright, let's move on. At this point, what we are actually doing is creating a process of mask following. Let's preview. Okay, by doing this, we've created a more pronounced virtual real effect. Alright, that's all for today's hands-on practice. Let's take a review of our class. The blur effect is perhaps the most commonly used effect and is a straightforward way to alter visual effects in a scene. Dynamic scenes require a blend of virtual and real elements. Even in flat compositions, this can provide a sense of space and contrast, triggering associations in viewers. Blurring can enhance the quality of the scene, even if the original footage is rough. Therefore, it's important to fully utilize various blur effects to enhance the quality of our work. Alright, students, that brings us to the end of the demonstration. Please practice regularly.